The research vessel Quiet Seeker had been drifting for 6 hours when Commander finally accepted that they were going to die. The ship had taken 17 direct hits from the patrol that had found them mapping the outer edges of the nebula. The attackers had left them broken and bleeding atmosphere into the void, presumably to return with a larger fleet to finish the job or to capture survivors for interrogation. Moved through the damaged corridors of his ship with the slow grace of his species. They were tall and thin, with scales that shifted color based on their emotions. Right now, his scales were a deep blue that spoke of sorrow and resignation. Around him, his crew of 42 scientists and explorers worked to keep the ship alive for a few more hours. They sealed breaches with emergency foam. They tended to the wounded in the medical bay. They did everything they could because that was their nature, even when hope was gone. They had traveled the stars for 3,000 years. They had mapped more systems than any other species in the known galaxy. They had discovered ancient ruins and extinct civilizations and recorded the birth of new stars. In all that time, they had never developed weapons. They had never needed them. The galaxy had seemed like a place of wonder and discovery, not violence and death. Then they had come. They were conquerors. They moved from system to system, taking what they wanted and destroying what they did not need. They had crushed the rebellion in a single devastating campaign. They had hunted the species to extinction for sport. They had made them into slaves. And now they had found the peaceful explorers with no defenses and no allies close enough to help. Entered the communications room and found his officer working at a damaged console. She looked up at him with scales that had gone pale with fear. "Commander, I have restored partial function to the emergency transmitter. We can send a distress signal, but I do not know if anyone will hear it. We are very far from any friendly territory." Placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Send it anyway, we must try." Nodded and activated the transmitter. The signal went out into the darkness, carrying their coordinates and a simple message: "Help us. We are dying. Please help us." Did not expect anyone to answer. The nearest ships were days away. The Galactic Council had declared this sector too dangerous to patrol. No one was coming. But the signal did not care about expectations. It traveled through space at the speed of light, bouncing off relay stations and spreading across frequencies that dozens of species monitored. And by pure chance, it reached a ship that was not supposed to be anywhere near this part of the galaxy. The cargo freighter Carolina was a working vessel, not a pretty one. She had been built 40 years ago in the orbital shipyards above Earth and had changed hands a dozen times since then. Her hull was patched and from decades of hard use. Her engines wheezed and complained when pushed too hard. Her crew quarters were cramped and her food synthesizers produced meals that tasted like cardboard. But she flew, and she carried cargo, and she made money for the people who worked on her. Captain Daniel Porter had owned the Carolina for 11 years. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that had been weathered by time and hard decisions. He had served in the Earth Defense Force when he was young, flying combat missions during the border conflicts that had shaped humanity's early expansion into space. When his service ended, he had used his savings to buy the Carolina and start a new life as a trader. His crew was small but loyal. Lisa Grant served as his first officer, a sharp woman in her 40s who had been with him for 8 years. Moore was his chief engineer, a genius with machines who could fix anything with enough time and enough cursing. Amy Collins was the ship's medic, a quiet person who had left a promising career in Earth's medical corps to see the stars. Chris Turner handled communications and navigation, a young man on his first deep space assignment who was eager to prove himself. They had been running medical supplies to a colony on the far side of the sector when Daniel made the decision to take a shortcut through restricted space. It was technically illegal. The Galactic Council had declared this region off-limits due to activity. But the colony was running low on antibiotics, and children were sick, and Daniel Porter had never been very good at following rules that got in the way of helping people. Chris Turner was the first to hear the distress signal. He sat up straight at his console, his eyes going wide as the translation software processed the incoming message. "Captain, I am picking up an SOS research vessel approximately 2 hours from our current position. They have been attacked and are requesting immediate assistance." Daniel turned from the viewport where he had been watching the stars. "Can you get me more information?" Chris worked his console. "Their ship is badly damaged, multiple hull breaches, they have wounded, and Captain, I am detecting signatures at the edge of scanner range. 12 ships, it looks like a war fleet." Lisa Grant moved to stand beside Daniel. She pulled up the tactical display and studied it with a grim expression. 12 warships against one crippled research vessel. They have no weapons. They are going to finish them off. "How far are the nearest friendly forces?" Daniel asked. "Hours away, maybe more. No one is going to reach them in time." Daniel stood in silence for a long moment. He looked at the display showing the dying ship. He looked at the fleet moving to intercept. He looked at his own vessel, a beat-up cargo freighter with no weapons and no shields, and no business being anywhere near a combat zone. He thought about the people on that research vessel. Scientists, explorers, people who had never hurt anyone, who had spent their lives trying to understand the universe. They were going to die because they had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and no one was coming to save them. Daniel Porter had made a lot of hard decisions in his life. He had watched friends die in combat. He had buried his wife 10 years ago after an illness that no medicine could cure. He had raised his daughter alone and taught her that some things mattered more than safety or comfort or following the rules. He walked to the intercom panel and activated the ship-wide channel. "All hands, this is the captain speaking. We have received a distress call from a research vessel approximately 2 hours from here. They have been attacked by and they are dying. There are 12 enemy warships moving to finish them off. We have no weapons. We have no backup. If we go to help them, we will probably die." He paused and took a breath. "I am not ordering anyone to do anything. This is not a military ship and you are not soldiers. But I am going to help those people because that is what we do. That is what it means to be human. Anyone who wants to leave, the escape pods are unlocked and I will not think less of you." He released the intercom and waited. No one left. Lisa Grant smiled and began plotting a new course. Moore headed down to engineering to squeeze every bit of speed out of the old engines. Amy Collins started preparing the medical bay for casualties. Chris Turner kept the channel to the ship open and began transmitting a message of his own. "Vessel, this is the cargo freighter Carolina. We have received your distress call. Hold on, we are coming." The Carolina changed course and accelerated toward the dying ship and the fleet of warships waiting to destroy it. Commander of the warship Iron Fang had been conquering worlds for 30 years. He had led fleets against species that outnumbered his forces 10 to 1. He had broken sieges and crushed rebellions and turned proud civilizations into ashes. In all that time, he had learned one simple truth about the universe. The strong survived and the weak perished. This was the natural order of things, and they had made themselves the strongest of all. The research vessel had been a pleasant surprise. His patrol had stumbled upon it while sweeping the nebula for potential threats. The ship had no weapons and no escorts. Its crew had not even tried to run. They had simply transmitted a message asking why they were attacking them, as if the answer was not obvious. They attacked because they could. That was reason enough. Had ordered his ships to cripple the vessel rather than destroy it outright. Live prisoners were more valuable than dead ones. The scientists aboard that ship would have knowledge worth extracting, star maps and research data and information about other species that they could use in their expansion. He had called for reinforcements and settled in to wait for the rest of the fleet to arrive. Now the fleet was assembled. 12 warships, each one bristling with weapons, each one crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. They would board the vessel, take what they wanted, and dispose of the rest. A simple operation that would be finished within the hour. Then the sensor officer spoke with confusion in his voice. "Commander, I am detecting a new contact approaching from the nebula boundary. Single vessel, small. It appears to be a cargo ship of some kind." Turn to the display with mild interest. Identify it. Unknown configuration. The design does not match any species in our database. Wait, I am receiving updated information from Central Intelligence. The officer paused as data scrolled across his screen. "Commander, the vessel is registered to a species called humans, from a world called Earth." A ripple of unease passed through the bridge crew, noticed it and frowned. "I have heard rumors about these humans. What do we know about them?" The intelligence officer pulled up a file and began to read. Earth is classified as a Category 12 world. The planet experiences extreme temperature variations, tectonic instability, violent weather patterns, and is home to millions of predatory species. The humans evolved in this environment by competing against their world and against each other. They are listed as highly aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerous. Snorted. Every species thinks it is dangerous until it meets the. What weapons does this cargo ship carry? Scanning now. The sensor officer worked his console. "Commander, the vessel appears to be unarmed. I am detecting a single-point defense turret, likely designed for deflecting small debris. No military weapons, no shields, no armor plating." "Then why is it approaching us?" No one had an answer. The cargo ship continued on its course, moving directly toward the crippled vessel. It passed the outer edge of the formation and kept coming, ignoring the weapons that tracked its approach. When it reached the ship, it positioned itself between the research vessel and the fleet, placing its small hull directly in the line of fire. Stared at the display for a long moment. "Open a channel to that ship." The communications officer worked his console. "Channel open, Commander." "Unidentified vessel, you are interfering with military operations. Identify yourself and withdraw immediately, or you will be destroyed." The response came in a voice that the translation matrix rendered as calm and steady. "This is Captain Daniel Porter of the cargo freighter Carolina out of Houston, Earth. We received a distress call from the vessel behind us. We are here to help them. You can leave now." Felt a strange sensation that took him a moment to identify. Confusion. He had expected fear, pleading, offers of surrender. Not this. "You are one unarmed ship against 12 warships. You have no chance of survival. This is not bravery, human. This is stupidity." "Maybe so," the human captain replied. "But those people called for help and we answered. That is what we do. If you want them, you will have to go through us." The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. This made no sense. No species sacrificed itself for strangers. Self-preservation was the most basic instinct in the universe. Every creature fled from danger, protected its own kind, and abandoned those who could not be saved. That was simple survival. Yet this human was doing none of those things. Leaned forward in his command chair. "Why? You do not know these, they are not your people, they have nothing to offer you. Why would you die for them?" There was a pause before the human answered. "Because where I come from, you do not leave people behind. You do not abandon someone just because saving them is hard or dangerous or might get you killed. We have a word for that kind of behavior. We call it being a coward, and we do not like cowards very much." Felt his grip tighten on the armrest of his chair. "You dare to insult me. I have conquered worlds. I have crushed species that begged for mercy. You are nothing but a cargo hauler in a ship held together by rust and desperation." "And yet here I am," the human said. "Still between you and those people, still not moving. You want to test how far a human will go to protect someone who needs help? Come on then. We have been fighting since before we left our caves. We have been killing each other and everything else on our planet for 100,000 years. You think 12 ships scare us? We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. We clawed our way off a world that tried to murder us every single day of our existence. Your fleet is scary, I will give you that, but we have seen worse. Cut the channel and sat in silence. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. The intelligence officer cleared his throat. Commander, I have additional information about Earth. There has a higher gravity than galactic standard, which means humans are physically stronger than most species. They also have a history of engaging in warfare against each other with remarkable persistence. Some of their conflicts lasted for generations. They appear to have no biological mechanism for accepting defeat. No mechanism for accepting defeat, repeated slowly. Additionally, humans are known to form strong emotional bonds with other species, sometimes even treating alien creatures as family members. This behavior is considered irrational by most galactic standards, but it appears to be deeply ingrained in their psychology. Looked at the display showing the small cargo ship positioned in front of the vessel. One ship, no weapons, a crew that had chosen to die rather than abandon strangers they had never met. For the first time in 30 years of conquest, felt something unfamiliar creeping into his thoughts. Doubt. He opened the channel again. Human, you have made your point, but surely you understand that you cannot win this. Stand aside and I will let you leave in peace. This quarrel is not yours. The human captain laughed. It was a strange sound, rough and sharp. You do not understand, do you? This became my quarrel the moment I heard their call for help. That is how it works. When someone needs you, you show up. You do not ask what is in it for you. You do not calculate the odds. You just go. And right now, those need someone to stand between them and you. So here I am. Here we all are. My whole crew voted to stay, not because we think we can win, but because running away was not an option any of us could live with. Stared at the display and made a decision. All ships, prepare to engage. Chris Turner had been broadcasting everything on open frequencies since the moment the Carolina changed course. It was a habit he had picked up from his father, who had served as a war correspondent during the border conflicts. When something important was happening, you made sure the galaxy knew about it. You put the truth out there and let people decide what to do with it. Now ships across the entire sector were listening to the standoff between one small human freighter and 12 warships. The signal bounced from relay station to relay station, spreading further with every passing minute. Thousands of beings heard Daniel Porter refuse to abandon strangers. Thousands more heard the commander threaten destruction. And somewhere in that vast audience, people were making decisions that would change everything. Aboard the Carolina, Moore had turned the engine room into a workshop. He had stripped components from secondary systems, raided the cargo hold for industrial equipment, and begun building something that no one had ever tried before. The freighter carried plasma welders for hull repair, magnetic grapples for securing cargo, and a mining laser that could cut through asteroids. None of these were weapons in the traditional sense. But Moore had grown up in the junkyards of Detroit, where you learned to make something useful out of whatever junk you could find. "What are you building?" Lisa Grant asked as she entered the engine room. Did not look up from his work. "Something stupid. Something that will probably not work, but if we are going to die anyway, we might as well give those something to remember us by." He was welding the mining laser to a rotating platform he had assembled from cargo handling equipment. It would not be accurate. It would not be powerful enough to penetrate warship armor, but it might, if he was very lucky, be able to damage sensor arrays or engine components. It was better than nothing. Lisa watched him work for a moment, then nodded. "What do you need?" "More power. Tell the captain I am going to reroute everything we have into this thing. Life support goes to minimum. Lights go off. Everything we can spare goes into giving this laser enough punch to matter." Done. On the bridge, Daniel Porter watched the fleet begin to move. The warships were spreading out, taking positions that would let them hit the Carolina from multiple angles. Standard encirclement tactics. They were not taking any chances, even against an unarmed freighter. Amy Collins appeared at his side. "Captain, I have prepared the medical bay as best I can, but if we take a direct hit from those weapons, there will not be anyone left to treat." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know, but we are not running." "I am not asking you to run. I just wanted you to know that I am glad I am here. When I left Earth, I wanted to find something worth believing in. I think I found it." Daniel looked at her, this quiet woman who had given up a comfortable life to travel among the stars. "Thank you, Amy. That means more than you know." The ship shuddered as rerouted power systems. The lights dimmed to emergency levels. The air recyclers slowed to a whisper. Every spare watt of energy was being channeled into whatever desperate weapon the engineer was building. Chris Turner spoke from his console. "Captain, I am receiving incoming transmissions, a lot of them." "From the—" "No, sir, from everywhere else." Chris looked up with something like wonder on his face. "The broadcast has spread across the entire sector. Ships are responding. Diplomatic vessels are demanding that the Galactic Council intervene. Traders are offering to send aid. And Captain, there is a human military patrol that picked up our signal. They are 3 hours away at maximum speed." "3 hours," Daniel said quietly. "We will not last 3 minutes once the shooting starts." "I know, sir, but they are coming anyway. Admiral Cole is commanding the response. She says she is burning her engines past safety limits to get here faster. She says to hold on as long as we can." Daniel felt something warm in his chest. He had served under Cole during the border conflicts, back when they were both young and the universe seemed simpler. She was the finest officer he had ever known, brave and smart and utterly unwilling to leave anyone behind. If anyone could reach them in time, it was her. But the math was brutal. 3 hours was an eternity in combat. "Tell Admiral Cole we will do our best," Daniel said, "and make sure she knows what happened here no matter what." "Already recording everything, Captain. The whole galaxy is going to know." Aboard the research vessel, Commander listened to the human transmissions with a mixture of awe and anguish. He could not believe what he was hearing. A species he had never met, from a world he had never seen, had placed themselves in mortal danger to protect his crew. It went against everything he understood about the universe. The philosophy taught that all beings acted in their own self-interest. Cooperation happened when it benefited all parties involved. Sacrifice was illogical because dead individuals could not enjoy the benefits of their actions. The mathematics of survival did not support heroism. Yet here were these humans, doing the mathematics wrong on purpose. Opened a channel to the Carolina. "Human Captain, this is Commander of the Quiet Seeker. Please, you must withdraw. You cannot win this fight. There is no logic in dying for us." Daniel Porter's voice came back tired but steady. "Commander, where I come from, we have a saying. Sometimes doing the right thing does not make sense. Sometimes it costs you everything. But you do it anyway because that is what makes you human. Logic does not enter into it." "But why? We are strangers to you. We have done nothing to earn this sacrifice." "You called for help, that is enough." Felt his scales shift through colors he did not have names for. These humans were insane. These humans were wonderful. These humans were going to die for him, and he could not do anything to stop them. The fleet finished their encirclement. 12 warships now surrounded the Carolina and the Quiet Seeker, their weapons charged and ready to fire. Commander appeared on the communications channel, his face filling the screen. "Human, this is your last chance. Stand aside or be destroyed." Daniel Porter stood up from his chair and faced the screen. Behind him, his crew continued their preparations, working calmly despite the death surrounding them. "My answer has not changed. You want those people, you go through us. And before you give the order to fire, I want you to remember something. Right now, thousands of ships across this sector are listening to every word we say. They are watching what you do, and they are going to remember. The conquered 47 systems because everyone was too afraid to stand up to you. Well, we are not afraid. We are humans. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day of our lives, and we survived. You are not the scariest thing we have ever faced, not even close. His expression flickered with something that might have been uncertainty. Fire at will, he said. The first missile was 2 seconds from impact when space itself seemed to tear open. Admiral Cole had done the impossible. She had pushed her engines beyond every safety limit, burned through fuel reserves that were supposed to last months, and driven her ships so hard that 3 of them would need complete engine rebuilds when this was over. She had covered a 3-hour journey in just under 2 hours, arriving at the exact moment when the Carolina was about to die. 7 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a perfect defensive formation, their shields already raised and their weapons already charged. The lead ship, a heavy cruiser called the Defiance, placed itself directly in the path of the incoming missile. The explosion rocked the vessel, but the shields held, absorbing an attack that would have vaporized the tiny freighter. Cole appeared on every screen in the sector, her gray hair pulled back tight and her eyes hard as stone. "This is Admiral Cole of the United Earth Defense Force. You have fired upon a civilian vessel under our protection. You have threatened a species that called us for help. I am giving you one opportunity to stand down and withdraw. I suggest you take it." Commander stared at the display in disbelief. 7 human warships had appeared from nowhere, positioning themselves between his fleet and the target. The tactical computers were already calculating firing solutions, but something about the numbers made him hesitate. Human warships were not elegant like the vessels of other species. They did not have the graceful curves of explorers or the sleek lines of traders. They were brutal angular things, covered in weapons platforms and armored plating so thick that they looked more like flying fortresses than starships. Every surface bristled with turrets and missile tubes and point defense systems. They had been designed by a species that had spent its entire history fighting, and they looked exactly like what they were. Instruments of war. "Commander," the sensor officer said quietly, "I am detecting additional contacts entering the system. Human signatures, many of them." Turned to the display and felt his stomach drop. Ships were appearing at the edges of scanner range. Military vessels from human patrol routes that had diverted from their assigned sectors. Civilian freighters that had armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find. Mining ships with industrial lasers mounted to their hulls. Research vessels with crews of scientists who had decided that today was a good day to fight. 10 ships, then 20, then 50. They came from every direction, burning toward the battle at maximum speed. They were not organized into any formal fleet structure. They were not following any coordinated battle plan. They were simply coming, every human ship within range responding to the same instinct that had driven Daniel Porter to place his freighter in front of the vessel. "You do not abandon your own." Cole's voice cut through the communications channel again. "Commander, let me explain something to you. The captain of that freighter is named Daniel Porter. He served under my command 20 years ago, back when we were both too young and too stubborn to know any better. He saved my life during the Battle of Station, pulled me out of a burning shuttle when everyone else had given me up for dead. I owed him a debt I never thought I would be able to repay." She paused and let the words sink in. Every human out here has a story like that. Someone who helped them when they needed it. Someone who stood by them when things got hard. That is how we work. We remember the people who show up for us, and we show up for them in return. Daniel Porter showed up for those because that is who he is. And now every human in this sector is showing up for him. You want to fight us? Fine. But understand what you are getting into. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We do not leave people behind. You may kill us, but you will never break us. Commander looked at the tactical display and did the mathematics that the humans apparently refused to do. His 12 ships against 7 human warships. But more human vessels were arriving every minute. The numbers were already even, and they would soon be overwhelming. His fleet could win this battle, perhaps, but at what cost? How many ships would he lose? How many warriors would die? And then there was the other factor, the one that the intelligence reports had warned about. Humans did not know when to quit. They would keep fighting long after any rational species would have surrendered. They would sacrifice themselves to take down enemy ships. They would turn a victory into a mutual destruction. "Commander," the intelligence officer said, "I am receiving reports from other sectors. Human military forces are mobilizing across the entire region. They are recalling ships from patrol duties, activating reserve units, and positioning themselves for a major engagement. This is no longer a local incident. This is becoming a war." Closed his eyes and thought about what he was facing. They had conquered 47 systems because every species they encountered understood the mathematics of power. When you were outnumbered and you surrendered. When victory was impossible, you accepted defeat. This was rational. This was logical. This was how the universe worked. But humans did not work that way. The small freighter Carolina was still broadcasting, its makeshift weapon tracking the nearest warship. The ship was battered and underpowered and held together by nothing but determination. It should have been easy prey. Instead, it had become the spark that set an entire sector on fire. "Commander," the communications officer said, "we are receiving transmissions from non-human vessels as well. Diplomatic ships are demanding safe passage to escort their damaged research vessel. Traders are threatening to embargo all commerce if we continue this engagement. Even they are stirring, asking questions about why we are fighting humans." Turned to face the display one final time. The human fleet had grown to nearly 100 ships now, a mix of military vessels and armed civilians, all of them ready to fight and die for one battered freighter and the strangers it was protecting. He thought about the intelligence reports and their warnings about humans, a species, survivors of a planet that had tried to kill them, creatures who had evolved by fighting everything, including each other, and who had somehow turned that violence into something that looked almost like love. They were insane, they were terrifying, and they were not going to back down. "All ships," said heavily, "withdraw to the nebula boundary. We are leaving." The fleet began to turn away, engines flaring as they moved toward the edge of the system. They left behind no wreckage, no destroyed vessels, no proof that they had ever been a threat. But they left something far more important. They left a message that every species in the galaxy would remember. The humans had come, the humans had stood their ground, and the had blinked first. On the bridge of the Carolina, Daniel Porter watched the enemy fleet retreat and felt his legs give out beneath him. Lisa Grant caught him before he hit the floor and helped him to his chair. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it." Daniel looked out at the human ships surrounding them, at the vessel they had risked everything to protect, at the vast darkness of space where they were disappearing into the distance. "No," he said, "we just held the line, they did the rest." Admiral Cole's voice came over the channel, warm with an emotion that Daniel had not heard from her in 20 years. "Carolina, this is Admiral Cole. Permission to come aboard. I believe I owe you a drink." Daniel laughed, the sound rough with exhaustion and relief. "Permission granted, Admiral. Bring the whole fleet if you want. We have a lot to talk about." Research vessel Quiet Seeker was towed to safety by a fleet of human ships that took turns volunteering for the duty. They moved slowly, carefully, treating the damaged vessel like something precious. When they reached the nearest human station, repair crews were already waiting, tools in hand and medical teams standing by. Commander had never seen anything like it. These humans, these that the galaxy feared, worked through the night to repair a ship belonging to a species they had never met. They shared their food and their quarters and their medicine without asking for anything in return. They treated the crew like honored guests rather than strangers who had cost them everything. On the third day after the battle, Daniel Porter came aboard the Quiet Seeker to check on the repairs. He found standing in the observation lounge, watching the human station through the viewport. The commander's scales were shifting through colors that Daniel could not interpret, but something about his posture suggested deep thought. Captain Porter said without turning around, "I have been trying to understand what happened. I have run the calculations many times. The mathematics say that you should not have done what you did. The risk was too high. The reward was too low. By any rational measure, you should have left us to die." Daniel moved to stand beside him, "And yet here you are." "Yes, here I am." Turned to face him, his large eyes searching the human's face for something he could not quite define. "I have studied your species since the battle. I have read everything I can find about Earth and about humans. Do you know what I learned?" "Tell me." "I learned that your world is a nightmare. Your planet has earthquakes and volcanoes and hurricanes. Your oceans are filled with creatures that would eat you alive. Your atmosphere carries diseases that kill millions. Everything about you is designed to destroy you, and yet you survived. You did not just survive, you thrived. You conquered your planet and then you reached for the stars." Daniel nodded slowly. "It was not easy. We lost a lot of people along the way. But you kept going. That is what I do not understand. They would have accepted extinction. We would have recognized that the universe was against us and we would have made peace with our end. But you refused. You kept fighting even when there was no logical reason to continue. Why?" Daniel thought about the question for a long moment. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, waiting for him to come home. He thought about his wife, who had fought so hard against her illness before finally letting go. He thought about all the humans throughout history who had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. "Because giving up is not who we are," he said finally. "We are stubborn. We are irrational. We care about things that do not make sense. When we see someone in trouble, we do not calculate the odds of success. We just help. It is built into us as deep as breathing." Made a sound that his translator rendered as a sigh. "The Galactic Council calls you dangerous. They say that humans are unpredictable and violent and cannot be trusted. After what I have seen, I think they are wrong. You are not dangerous to those who need help. You are only dangerous to those who try to hurt the helpless." That is probably the nicest thing anyone has ever said about us. It is simply the truth. Reached out and placed a thin hand on Daniel's shoulder, a gesture he had seen humans use to express connection. "I have decided to recommend that the collective seek a formal alliance with Earth. We have mapped the stars for 3,000 years, but we have never found a species worth fighting alongside. Until now." Daniel felt something catch in his throat. "That means a lot, Commander, more than you know." In the weeks that followed, the story of the Carolina spread across the galaxy. The recording that Chris Turner had made was, and shared millions of times, translated into hundreds of languages, and discussed on every station and planet within communication range. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly knew everything about the cargo freighter that had faced down a war fleet. The who had been subjugated by the for generations began to whisper about rebellion. The who had served as slaves for so long that freedom seemed like a dream started asking questions about what it would mean to be free. Even the who everyone believed had been hunted to extinction sent a message from their hidden colony, asking if the humans might be willing to help them rebuild. From 3 systems near human space. They claimed it was a strategic repositioning, but everyone knew the truth. The conquerors had met a species that did not fear them, and they were not sure what to do about it. Admiral Cole returned to Earth a hero, but she refused all interviews and public appearances. When reporters asked about the battle, she simply said that she had done what any human would do. She had shown up for a friend. Daniel Porter went home to his daughter. She met him at the spaceport with tears in her eyes and anger in her voice. "You promised you would come back safe," she said. "You almost died." "I know, sweetheart, I know." He held her tight and breathed in the smell of her hair. "But sometimes promises have to wait. Sometimes there are more important things. More important than me. Daniel pulled back and looked into her eyes. Nothing is more important than you, but there were people who needed help and no one else was coming. What would you have wanted me to do? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she hugged him again than before. I would have wanted you to help them, she said softly. That is what you taught me. When someone needs you, you show up. That is right, baby. That is what it means to be human. The galaxy changed after that day. Not quickly and not all at once, but the change was real. Species that had lived in fear began to hope. Empires that had seemed invincible began to crack. And through it all, the humans kept doing what they had always done. They answered distress calls. They protected the helpless. They stood between the innocent and those who would harm them, not because it was logical, not because it benefited them, but because that was who they were. The historians would eventually write about this period as the beginning of a new age, the moment when the galaxy learned that strength was not the same as cruelty, and that the most dangerous species in the universe was also the most compassionate. They called it the Age of the. And it all started with one small freighter, one stubborn captain, and a distress call that should have gone unanswered. But humans do not leave people behind. That is just not who they are.